The shadow man of Route 44, drive that road alone at night, and you'll see him, standing still at the shoulder. But whatever you do, don't stop. If he appears in your back seat, don't scream. He only stays if you notice. Along the fog-choked back roads of Route 44 in Rhode Island, a spectral figure is said to stalk drivers who pass by after midnight, a tall man, dressed in dark, tattered clothing, with glowing red eyes that burn like embers through the mist. He doesn't wave. He doesn't ask for help. He just watches. Then he's gone, until your headlights flicker, your radio goes static, and the air in your car turns cold enough to see your breath. And when you check the mirror, if you're stupid enough to check the mirror, he's there. In the back seat. Closer every mile. I was driving back from a wedding, the kind of solo highway drive that stretches through farmland and nothingness for hours, headlights slicing the dark into manageable chunks. The road was dead, except for the fog. Thick. Heavy. It crawled against the asphalt like something alive, swallowing distance in chunks. That's when I saw him. A man. Standing at the shoulder. Tall. Thin. Motionless. I slowed just out of instinct, but didn't stop. Not out here. Not for anyone. But something changed. The air went cold. My heater was still on, but my breath misted out of me like steam from a broken pipe. The radio hissed, flickered, then went dead. I laughed nervously, muttered something like, "Must be the elevation." And then I checked the mirror. There he was. In the back seat. Close enough I could see the texture of his skin, or lack of it, a face like wax pulled over bone, eyes glowing red, not lit, but burning, like cinders pushed deep into his skull. He didn't move. Not at first. But each time I blinked, he got closer. By the time I was 20 miles out, I could feel his breath on my neck. I don't remember how I got home. But I haven't driven since. Not alone. And sometimes, even now, I still see that ember glow in the back seat of parked cars. The body under the bed, the hotel smelled like copper. The receptionist said it was nothing. But I should have listened to my gut, because that smell doesn't come from the carpet, it comes from underneath. It's a traveler's worst nightmare, checking into a cheap roadside hotel, lying down on a creaky bed, and waking to that smell. Sickly sweet. Metallic. The smell of blood. They say if you report it, they'll move you to a different room. But if you look, if you dare kneel and lift that musty mattress skirt, you'll find them. A body. Stuffed into the hollow frame of the bed. And the worst part isn't that someone died there. It's that someone put them there while you were sleeping. The drive had worn me thin, and the only motel for miles looked like it hadn't been cleaned since 1972. But I was exhausted, and the manager at the desk said it was just me and a couple truckers staying that night. Room 8. I remember the number because the 8 was faded into a shape that looked more like a noose. Inside, it smelled off. Like rust and wet pennies. But I blamed the pipes. The place looked ancient. I fell asleep quickly. But I woke at 3:11 a.m. Thirsty. And that's when the smell hit harder, like the copper had curdled in my nose, thick and nauseating. I turned on the lamp. Roaches skittered along the wall. But worse than the bugs was the mattress. It looked damp. I don't know why I did it. I shouldn't have. But I knelt. Lifted the cover. And saw a face. Bloated. Blue. Eyes wide and mouth full of clotted darkness. The body had been there for days, crammed into the base, neck twisted backwards like a broken marionette. And on the sheets above, my own handprint. Bloody. Still wet. I ran. And when the cops came the next day, they said room 8 was never checked out to anyone. They had shut it down years ago. After the first body was found. The smiling mirror: if you stare into a mirror long enough, your reflection will begin to shift. Smile when you're not. Move when you don't. And if you blink, just once, she replaces you. We all know the thrill of staring too long into the mirror late at night, testing that thin, veiny boundary between what we see and what we imagine. But there's an old Appalachian tale that warns of a woman, long dead, face torn by glass, who lingers behind reflections. They call her the smiling mirror. She watches from just behind the shimmer. If you make eye contact for more than 60 seconds, she mimics you. If you blink, she smiles. And when you open your eyes again, you're the one on the wrong side. It started as a stupid dare, Bloody Mary, for grown-ups, they said. The instructions were simple: sit alone. Light one candle. Stare into a mirror for exactly 1 minute. I did it in the bathroom. Drunk. Laughing. But when the candle flickered, and the shadows stretched along the ceiling like fingers, long and black, I started to feel cold. My reflection didn't blink when I did. It lagged. Then its mouth twitched. Just a bit. A subtle curl. Mine didn't. It smiled. Wide. Teeth too sharp. Then it leaned forward. And pressed its forehead against the glass like it wanted out. I blinked. And now I'm still here. Behind the mirror. Screaming. But the thing on the outside looks like me. And it's still smiling. The stone baby of Hollow Glen. There's a hill in Hollow Glen where nothing grows, no birds sing, and no one stays after dark, not because of ghosts, but because of what's buried there, the stone baby. They say if you touch it, you'll hear crying in your walls for the rest of your life, and one night, it'll crawl out. I was never superstitious. I came to Hollow Glen as an amateur folklorist, chasing scraps of oral history for my thesis. Most stories were just that, stories. But every old-timer I met grew quiet at the mention of the stone baby. They didn't say much. Just, don't go up that hill. Not even in daylight. Naturally, I did. The hill was bald, no trees, no grass, just a scatter of wind-shifted dirt and a crude circle of flat stones. In the center was something I thought was a carving. A baby. Curled like it had died in the womb, gray as river rock, with its eyes sealed shut. I touched it. Foolishly. I felt nothing then. But that night, in my rented room, I heard the first cry. Muffled. Hollow. Like it came from the inside of the walls. I told myself it was a pipe. Until the crying started following me. Room to room. Then I heard scratching. Tiny fingernails across drywall. And the smell. Like clay. Wet clay and rot. When I finally pulled the bed away from the wall, there were tiny handprints. I moved out the next day. But the crying came with me. And now, sometimes, I hear breathing under the floorboards. Last night I saw a crack in the plaster, and two little stone fingers poking through. The lantern bride of Crowsfoot Marsh. Don't follow the light in the marsh, my grandmother used to say. It ain't a star. It ain't a rescue. It's the lantern bride, looking for someone to take back down with her. The stories always sounded poetic to me: swamp lights, women in white, ghost brides wandering lost. But Crowsfoot Marsh was different. Locals didn't just warn me. They begged me. Don't walk the bog after sundown, said the woman who rented me the shack. That bride's still down there, weeping lantern and all. I was too curious. I went out with a flashlight and recorder, notebook in hand, convinced I'd hear frogs, maybe see a will-o'-the-wisp. Instead, I heard a lullaby. Soft. Sad. And then I saw the glow, white, low, hovering inches above the bog water. It moved. I followed. Something about it pulled me in, not hypnotic, but familiar, like the memory of a song my mother used to hum. Then I saw her. Torn veil. Mouth sewn shut. Lantern dangling from her wrists, fused to skin by bone-white wire. She turned slowly. And I realized her feet weren't touching the mud. She floated. She stared. And the lantern pulsed. The light bent around her like it wanted to drag me in. I ran. But my boots stuck. The marsh pulled hard. And when I looked back, she was closer. Veil fluttering like a gill. Lantern casting shapes, faces in agony, in its flickering glow. I barely made it back. And to this day, I sleep with the windows locked, because every year on the anniversary of that night, I hear her song again. The witch hare of Blackbind Hollow. If you see a black hare with human eyes, don't shoot it, don't follow it, and above all, don't let it speak. Because it remembers who wronged it, and it always comes back wearing your face. My grandfather told me the tale once, when I was little, something about a woman accused of witchcraft, chased into the woods by pitchforks and dogs. They said she turned into a hare to escape. Shot, skinned, buried. But every few decades, someone saw it again, always on the edge of Blackbind Hollow. Always watching. I was a skeptic. Until last fall. We were hunting. Me and Ben. We saw it. A jet black hare, standing oddly still in the frost, its head tilted like it was listening. Ben shot it. The thing didn't fall. It laughed. A dry, wet lunged sound. And then it ran. We followed the blood trail. Found no hare. Just a woman's footprint. Bare. Bleeding. Leading into the trees. That night, Ben went missing. The next morning, something knocked at my door. It looked like Ben. Same boots. Same coat. But the eyes were too round. Too black. And when it smiled, it had hare's teeth. The night whistler of Widow's Orchard. If you hear a whistle after dark and you didn't whistle first, don't look out your window. Don't answer your door. Don't even breathe too loud. Because the thing out there will be listening. And once it knows your voice, it's already inside. I grew up hearing about Widow's Orchard from my grandmother, a twisted stretch of gnarled apple trees at the edge of the county line that hadn't borne fruit in over 50 years, a place no one harvested and no one walked past after dusk. She said people used to disappear out there, whole families. But it wasn't until I moved back to care for her in her final weeks that I truly understood why she kept a salt line across her threshold, and why the old wind chimes by her door never made a sound unless the wind came from the orchard. It started with the whistle, long, mournful, rising like steam at 3:12 a.m. I remember it clearly because I looked at the clock just before I opened my eyes, confused by the sound. It was coming from the backyard. Soft, breathy, almost tuneless, but human. I didn't respond. I stayed in bed, heart pounding. The next night, it came again. Same time. Only this time, it was closer. At the window. I heard the faintest knock. 3 slow taps. I peeked through the curtain. Nothing. Just fog and the shadow of the orchard. The third night, it whistled again, but I could swear it was mimicking something. Not a song. My breathing. Every exhale matched, like someone out there was echoing the rise and fall of my chest. Then it spoke. Low. Garbled. Almost like it was learning. It said, "You heard me." And then the doorknob turned. The glass maiden of Hollow Falls. They say if you walk along the edge of Hollow Falls at twilight, you might see her standing under the mist, hair like riverweed, skin clear as glass. If you see her, don't speak. Don't blink. Don't breathe, or she'll climb inside you, and all that will be left is your skin, folded and left behind like wet laundry. Hollow Falls isn't on any map. You have to hear about it. A half-whispered place you only find when you're not looking, when you're already lost. I was hiking off trail, phone dead, the sky already turning that smoky violet shade that means night is coming faster than you think. I saw the mist rising between the pines and thought it was just the sudden drop in temperature. But then I saw her. She was standing waist deep in the black pool beneath the falls, her skin the same color as the water, her body so translucent I could see the fish darting behind her ribcage, flickering through her like candlelight behind ice. Her eyes were the worst part. They weren't eyes at all. Just smooth, curved glass where her face should have had depth, and yet I could feel her seeing me, tracking my movement even as she didn't move. Then she raised a hand. Palm open. And I couldn't help it. I took a step forward. The forest sound stopped. No birds. No bugs. Just my foot sinking into mud that hadn't been there seconds before. She smiled. Her teeth were river stones, polished, perfect, and far too many. Then she opened her mouth, and I heard the sound of rushing water from inside her. It wasn't until I looked down that I realized she was no longer standing in the pool, she was standing on me. I couldn't move. I blacked out. I woke up hours later, lying at the edge of the falls, soaked, with my clothes turned inside out and a perfect mirror image of my own face etched in frost on the rocks beside me. Sometimes, when I sleep, I dream of standing in water, watching my own body walk away. The strangled smiling boy, there's a photograph no one will show you. It's always kept locked in attics or buried at the back of drawers. It's of a boy smiling. Head tilted too far, neck bruised deep purple like a rope's been there too long. If you find it, don't look too long. Because he'll smile back. And once he knows you've seen him, he wants you to match. I found the photo in a junk box I bought at an estate auction, a sealed wooden chest full of black and white snapshots, Polaroids, and forgotten negatives. Most of them were dull. Church picnics. Class photos. But one was wrong. It was a child, maybe 7 or 8. Dark hair. Freckles. Wearing what looked like a hand-sewn Sunday suit. He smiled, but it wasn't a natural smile. It was wide. Too wide. His head was angled in an unnatural tilt, one ear almost touching his shoulder. And his neck, there were bruises. They looked old. Permanent. Like his head had been twisted too far, too long, and just left that way. There was something in his eyes. Not pain. Not even sadness. Invitation. That night, I heard whispering. It sounded like a child practicing something under his breath. Repeating it. A rhythm. Turn your head and smile for me. Over and over. The mirror in my hall cracked without cause. My dog stopped eating. And my own reflection, sometimes it smiled before I did. On the third night, I found the photo lying face up in the middle of my bedroom floor. I didn't put it there. I burned it. Or tried to. But every time I wake up, it's back on my dresser. The smiling boy's face a little closer. And now, when I look in the mirror, I can't straighten my neck. It hurts. Like something slowly pulling my head sideways, trying to teach me how to smile just right. The bone-eyed midwife, in villages lost to time, midwives have always been both feared and revered, but there's one midwife no mother ever spoke of aloud. The bone-eyed midwife, they called her. They said she never held a newborn without first taking something, an eye, a finger, a memory. Mothers whispered that if you saw her true face, the empty sockets where her eyes should be, you would never forget the sight, but you'd lose something far worse, your soul. I grew up in a village where births were rare, and midwives were practically saints, women of iron and prayer who welcomed life into a world that was otherwise cruel and cold. When my sister went into labor, we called for an elderly woman named Agda, who came highly recommended by the old wives of the village. She was silent and fast, her hands sure and cruelly precise. But there was something in her gaze that chilled me, though I thought it was the flickering candlelight playing tricks. They said she had no eyes, that instead, deep sockets of polished bone stared out from beneath her heavy brows. When my nephew was born, I watched from the shadows as Agda cradled him, humming a song older than the hills, a tune so cold it felt like frost on my skin. Then she reached out and plucked something from the infant's face. I blinked, and it was gone. The baby's left eye, replaced with a dull black orb that didn't reflect light. I tried to scream, but my throat seized tight. Agda turned to me. Her empty sockets burned into my soul. She whispered, "Life demands balance." That night, my sister screamed. The child's cries were guttural, animalistic, no longer human. I rushed in and saw the baby thrashing violently, the missing eye socket bleeding raw flesh. And behind the crib, standing in the corner, was Agda. Her mouth opened impossibly wide. From within, dozens of tiny bones rattled, teeth, fingers, tiny skull fragments. She fed the child something I couldn't see, whispering curses older than the village itself. I tried to grab the baby, but it lashed out, its new eye glowing like a dying star. I stumbled back and fell through the floorboards. Days later, when I came to, Agda was gone. My nephew was missing too. But the villagers whispered of a new curse: the bone-eyed midwife always returns, one eye taken, one soul lost. The nail collector, they say every man who dies with nails in his coffin finds his way back to the living, not as a man, but as a collector of nails. These aren't ordinary nails. They come from your very bones. And when the nail collector comes knocking, he isn't looking for doors or wood. He's looking for flesh to dismantle, one sharp, rusty nail at a time. My grandfather was a carpenter, old school, with rough hands and a temper that snapped like dry twigs in the winter. When he passed, the village insisted on placing nails in his coffin, a ritual meant to hold the spirit down, so it wouldn't roam free. No one told me what really happened after. 3 nights after the burial, I woke to the sound of scraping, slow, grinding, like metal on bone. At first, I thought it was rats. But the sound came from inside the house. Closer. A sharp rap at the basement door. I grabbed my father's hammer and crept down. The air was thick with iron and rot. The light barely touched the damp walls. And then I saw it, fingers, long and cracked, clawing through the floorboards, dragging itself upward. Each fingertip was a rusted nail, sharp and corroded like broken promises. It was him. The nail collector. His face was a mass of bone and splintered wood, eyes that bled rust-colored tears. He hissed through his cracked lips, "Give me back what's mine." I ran, but the noise followed, the scraping, the dragging, the click of nails against the floor. I heard the sound of nails being pulled from wood, but it was coming from my body. I looked down. One hand was missing a fingernail. And a tiny, sharp nail was embedded in my palm, burning like acid. They say the nail collector never stops. He wants your bones. He wants you broken apart, one nail at a time.